My dear fellows, today I simply contemplated of talking about philosophies, all kinds of philosophies, Western, Eastern, ancient, medieval, modern, postmodern, and what's in the currency or what's in the fashion now, and how we have been treading the path of philosophies right from ancient, in which most of the philosophical ideas of democracy or equitable distribution of wealth and Marxism or socialism didn't exist. So basically, I'll talk about Western philosophy, which is starting from in the ancient, we may not even know the prominent philosophers, but I'll just mention one of the philosophers, and that's in the ancient, like 6th century BC to 6th century AD. Mostly the Greek civilization has been the cradle of Western philosophy, because all the philosophies either derived or extension or have been deliberated upon the basis of further questioning or putting those philosophies to a not unquestionable state, but to parse, to also to judge on the anvil of reason or society or morality. So one of the prominent philosophers of the era was known as Thales, and he's the earliest natural philosopher. He believed that water was an essential element. I mean, water was something that the whole entire universe revolved around. And also it's an abstract thinking, and Thales is the first to attempt to interpret the universe in a mental way, far from religious myths. Most of our philosophies hover around the narratives or myths that we have woven, or because of our belief system, or because we are made to believe in them, mostly based on legendary characters in the historical backdrop, or could be the basis of some of the prophecies made or prophetic essence in it. So most of the philosophies, they hover around the essential topics of social justice, knowledge, morality, existence of God, also origin, and that's where the science and religion, they don't see eye to eye. And undoubtedly Plato is one of the most prominent philosophers, and he wrote dialogues that addresses various topics and in the form of deliberating upon and arrive at a sort of conclusion. So Plato founded theory of proverbs, seeing that there was another world apart from this universe. There exists a world of proverbs which contain absolute truth. So seeking truth and seeking beyond what we can comprehend or what our naked eyes can see has always been the pastime of most of the intellectual minds. And if you don't mention Aristotle, though he's a disciple of Plato, but he largely disagreed with him in many things. And he focused on the study of nature and science, and he wrote comprehensive works in logic, ethics, and politics. Aristotle is actually the founder of the science of logic, and he laid the foundation upon which modern Western philosophy has been based for almost 20 to 2,000 years, several centuries. So if we go further into the medieval or modern or postmodern, there are some notable philosophers, and I'm going to include them in my discussion here. It could be Romanesque and Epicureanism, alongside the great philosophers of Western philosophy for many centuries. These various schools of thoughts, they have also survived. Now, there was one founded by Zenon and Epicureans founded by Epicure. The novel called for acceptance of fate and control emotions. So while the Epicurean focused on seeking happiness through moderation and avoiding pain, and in the 15th century, like 5th to 15th century Middle Ages, the Western philosophy was greatly influenced or probably advanced or forged ahead with the philosophy of Christian faith. Because one of the most important philosophers era, Augustine, Saint Augustine is considered the foremost theological philosophers, and he is the one who revived Christianity, and he pushed for political unity and also wanted the entire universe to go for a universal faith system and have to have a theology philosophy which could reconcile the Plato's philosophy and the Christian faith. So in his book, The City of God, Augustine defended Christianity in the face of criticism that came against him after the fall of the Roman Empire. Because Romans, they wanted Christianity to be so well established. In fact, they were not in the favor of any of the religion, but seeing that only through the universal belief system the empire could be built, there could be unified justification for divinity. I mean, the king would claim to have some sort of divinity, and he would be unquestioned and he would never be challenged. So the Christianity, although it was an amalgam of, and it's brought about Trinity principles, and then there was a Protestant protest against this kind of clergy and popish priesthood and the unclenching powers of those in the ecclesiastic seat. So it got to be well established, sanctified, and also to be stamped with kind of artistic philosophy. Then no doubt Islamic philosophy also came into being, and during this period it played a major role in the formation of Western thought by virtue of having one of the richest language. All Greek philosophy works were translated into Arabic because of the thriving cultural hot seat where most of the best minds of that time, like Farabi, Ibn Sinai, Ibn Rashid, were bridges, and they served as the bridges between the ancient philosophy to the West, and also influenced Christian philosophy later in European thought. So then comes the philosophy in the Renaissance era, in the 15th century to 17th century. With the onset of Renaissance, that means the new ideas and rationalism, didacticism, philosophy began to defy traditional thoughts, and because it was not all out for taking the narrative of the philosophical prophecies based on hereafter, death and life and resurrections, and all those things were challenged, and then doors were open to science, and the scientific inquiry was onset. And one of the most prominent philosophers of this period was Descartes, the French philosopher. Ron Descartes is considered a founder of modern philosophy. So it was based on absolute certainty, and he questioned everything and reached an undeniable truth. He asked all his students, and in the class, he went around and says, okay, keep questioning the validity, the reality, and never accept it as a touchstone of truth until it is subjected to all kinds of scrutiny. And so the next philosopher notable among those, Francis Bacon. Bacon is considered one of the most important thinkers in the Renaissance. The Renaissance and the mechanized machine and industrial revolution, machines were being introduced, and life was becoming too torturous in the sense that everybody was subject to keep slogging just to earn their breads, and there was harsh reality. And so this English philosopher Thomas Hobbes, he was interested in political philosophy, in fact, and he wanted to come up with a kind of generalized philosophy. And in his book Leviathan, he talked about social contract and human nature. He saw that man is a normal state, lives in a state of chaos, and he didn't see much of the meaning in the conflict and in the animosity and in the negotiations of life with just and he wanted that there should be some sort of governance with a democracy or capitalistic socialistic form of government to ensure peace and security. That means people on their own cannot establish kind of harmony in society, and there has to be governance. There has to be a system where people should make the rules of law, and they need to be followed, and those who defy them need to be punished. So there should be a punishment and reward system. Modern philosophy is a great boom of the evolution of science and reasoning. So it's obviously it's undergoing transformation, not only in its consequences, its rationale. The philosophers, the superiors, sought to understand the nature of knowledge because of the too much of explosion of the knowledge in the form of printing press and Bible and Quranic scriptures and all sorts of literature started flooding, and there was no dearth of the world class literature in most of the prominent languages, and those who read and write. Literate people, they could always lay hands onto the books around, and they started to question the validity, the possibility, and also they started to explore on themselves the nature of knowledge. They also wanted to know, why do we exist, and why society has to follow certain norms, and why can't we have an absolute freedom, and what should be a rationalistic perspective. So when it comes to rationalistic and didacticism, and I would mention Immanuel Kant, which considered the greatest philosopher of modern times, and he wrote great works on moral philosophy and the theory of knowledge. So his book, The Criticism of Pure Mind, he introduced new theory, and that theory was based on knowledge of the human mind, seeing that is the mind that organizes our experience for reality. It's not the other way around. That means whatever comes to our mind and what reality is reflected is formed. The reality is formed inside our mind, and then we try to conceptualize and contemplate on those reality. Next comes the German philosopher Hegel. His theory of dialectic, which is based on the idea that history evolves through the conflict. That means people are the loggerheads, they keep fighting, the conflict, and everybody wants to move entire humanity towards freedom or some sort of rationality. So John Stewart, and this is another prominent philosopher, John Stuart Mill, and he also thought of the political philosophy of the 9th century, because the question arises whether we should go for a capitalistic or Marxist, Lenin, and all those people that started talking about freedom. And there was pan-nationalism, there was Renaissance, followed by struggle for freedom, and also about French revolutions. Then comes the individual liberty, then civilized, and then the Americans came to being, and they wanted to have their own Declaration of Independence based on absolute fraternity, equality, and justice. So now the 20th century coming to, it has evolved into what we can considered to be the development or the emergence of multiple philosophical movements, such as it could be existential, could be programmatic and decomposition, or philosophy in this period is invested in new issues. Now we're talking about language, self-identity, gender biases, heterogeneous sexual orientations. I was talking about absolute freedom of the self, and Me Too movement, and the foremost philosopher of contemporary times could be one of those, Sartre, French philosopher again. So it seems like French is endowed, is rife with the productivity of most of the world-class philosophers, and he was a pioneer of existential philosophy, which focused on individual freedom. He said that every human being must live to the fullest of his life, and he should be given an option to choose, and he should be responsible for his own happiness and well-being, or chaos. So in his book, Sartre, Being and Non-Being, Sartre presented a theory of human freedom, where he saw that man is solely responsible for his actions and choices. That means it's up to us to determine, and all our actions have their own consequences, and we are what the choices we're making in our life. So Michel Foucault is a French philosopher. Another philosopher is interested in study of power and the knowledge in modern societies. So he wrote many works that tackle issues of power and control, such as surveillance and punishment. Obviously, the kind of life we live in, the coexistence and multidisciplinary and multilateral level with wide hiatus of haves and have-nots, and so we have a surveillance state all around, all over the world, because there are powerful hegemonistic regimes, and we need to have a collective reward and punishment system, where and although he wrote the book, it's called History of Madness, that obviously he is being critical, and he talked about how individual freedom is being curbed in the name of democratic governments and all that. Next on, Richard Rorty, one of the most important philosophers of the 20th century, modern time. He advocated to move away from the search for absolute truth. Now he says that let's focus on practical philosophy. What is practical philosophy? It's like improving our human life, and whatever philosophy of life helps us to improve our conditions, that's the best philosophy, and each individual should be allowed to live to the fullest of his capabilities, with kind of self-expressions, and so he was not in the view of curbing the rights or surveillance system or large-scale punitive measures, and he wanted, he's of the opinion that he advocated that absolute truth lies in improving human life. Like all our efforts and all our purpose of life is nothing but the entire humanity on the individual level or the mass level is to bring about cataclysmic changes in the quality of each individual, where everyone's basic rights are protected, and everyone has access to food, shelter, and so although this is the basic human need that any philosophy, any government, any kind of system or subsystem or just must ensure, and human life cannot be as creative or cannot survive with its self-respect and with its self-esteem and with the highest. That's what Marshall says, the end point of the relations, the best that we all have. We go for our basic needs and we improve upon, and then we start thinking with intellectual propriety. Then we start critical thinking, and then we start to the best of the thinking, or zenith of where we can see a sense of accomplishment, a sense of gratification, not the instantaneous one, but the penultimate one, the long run, what we would like to achieve in our life. So Western philosophy, since its origin in ancient Greek civilization until the modern age, has made tremendous contributions to understanding and the world around us. I couldn't include majority of those philosophers or mystic, writers or poets, or like Rumi and for Hafiz, and in the Persian world, within they also played a prominent role in not only coaxing and calming and refining our thoughts and having to induce sort of really ennobling thoughts in us, because our existence is not just mere existence of the animal life level. We are born with infinite, endowed with immense, and we have the capabilities to do the insurmountable if we are allowed to play our roles that we are born to justify by Almighty God, whatever belief system we continue with it. But the philosophies of life keep on changing, keep on evolving, and with the passage of time, I really wonder whether we will have any sort of an iota of doubt that the 21st century will rewrite. In fact, it will have its own philosophy, because probably will be cyborg and post-human, that part machine, part humans, and our even thinking, our contemplation pattern will all be affected with the onset of the advanced technology that we have. And we might delegate our thinking to those kind of machines, and the machines might be our counselor, our agents, our day-to-day friends, and we may not need other human beings around to socialize with. Probably right from in the cyber bots or robots or AI things, and all kinds of things we'll be surrounded by, and we'll be living most of the time in the immersive world, not the real world, and we'll hardly be left with any time or any capabilities, because we will be mostly under the influence, surveillance, or guidance, or the companionship. And I'll say companionship, I mean, that means we are not going to have any collegiality or social contracts or social engineering that we are thinking or talking about. And that would be a dangerous state when we lose our divine faculties, the power to nurture, power to empathize, power to strike a communion with natural phenomena, think of things which are godly, heavenly, thinking in terms of hereafter and our accountability and all that. So anyway, it sounds a bit cynical to think of an age in which humans will no more be humans per se. They would be cyborg, and I dread the day. But still, our intellect, our brain is infinitely capable of handling all the pervasive or invasive or the cataclysmic, or like a bombshell is intelligence, all the intelligence around us, which are trying to overpower our intelligence, and our intelligence becoming substitute to the intelligence. So that day would be really disastrous when we just hand over all our ingeniousness, divinity, intellect, our insightful, gainful insight into the to our subordinates, or those who will be the agents, so to say. Anyway, wishing the very best to all those endeavors going on to say goodbye to this earth, because there are people who believe that this earth is not going to stay any longer. At least it will be so ravaged that it won't be livable, and Elon Musk is trying to inhabit Mars, fearing that our Earth probably would be left to at the mercy of maybe climate changes, maybe some sort of a natural man-made disaster and all. God knows. I mean, like, so talking about all the philosophies today has left me a bit more open to thinking, and I keep juggling around all the kinds of conflicting and all contenders and all the philosophy are trying to gain my own insight into them and one independent thinking based on my experiential learning and my way of looking at my own unique perspective and not having perception but in my unique perspective, and that's what I expect from everybody around. Stay blessed, all of you guys. Thank you for being with me.